Good day, everyone. Let me present to you our paper entitled The Effects of E-Machine Shorthand Online Teaching Practices to Students' Performance, Evidence from Rizal Technological University. The authors are Dr. J.B. Ogobalio, Professor Ellie B. Marbella, and yours truly, Marvin A. Puentes. Let me proceed. So let me read the introduction. In the Philippines, the first quarter of 2020 saw an unexpected challenge in the field and system of education. As the SARS-CoV-19 global pandemic became an issue, bringing many challenges, particularly to educational institutions, faculty, parents, and students, the pandemic imposed many constraints, particularly on the operations, systems, and even strategies of the educational system. As a result, the majority of educational institutions, both private and public, shifted to a new paradigm shift from traditional to online platform style of teaching. The CHED Memorandum Order Number 4 series of 2020 was issued by the Commission of Higher Education in the Philippines, whose main role is to make and create appropriate steps or actions to ensure that quality education is accessible to all. The circular focused on that during the time when face-to-face classes were disrupted due to the community quarantine or lockdown, classification was imposed. Higher educational institutions were directed to use a flexible style platform to deliver and facilitate a continuous learning scheme in order to continue providing services in difficult times. With regards to the research gap, in the Philippine context, there were no existing studies that specifically focused on e-machine shorthand, online teaching practices, and the majority of existing researches focus only in the traditional style of teaching practices rather than the embraced new, better, normal strategy. Researchers were prompted to investigate and explore the relationship between e-machine shorthand online teaching practices and student performance in the context of the new normal in education system and setup. Let us read the hypothesis. There is no significant relationship in the respondents' assessment of the e-machine shorthand, online teaching practices, and students' performance. The research method, no, after gathering and cleaning the data, the research made use of correlational research design to determine the significant and positive relationship of the independent variables, which pertains to the steno or e-steno online teaching practices and the dependent variables under students' performance. The researchers tests the statistical power of the sample size through warp PLS by using inverse square root method and gamma exponential method. If you're going to look at in the figure number 1, minimum required sample size computation, based on the calculated sample size, then minimum requirements are 298 to 311, which has a statistical power of 80% that is interpreted as acceptable level. The total sample used in the study is 328, which is higher than the required minimum number of respondents. Let us move on. With regards to the profile of respondents, Table 1 shows the profile of the respondents of the study. It depicts that majority of the respondents are aged 21 to 26 years of age, with a frequency of 311 and percent of 94.8. Female, 252 in percentage, it's 76.8. Single, female, 326 in the percentage is 99.4%. And using Moodle, female, 293%, it's 89.3 as their learning modality platform. With regards to the table number 2, it talks about validity and reliability of the constructed survey questionnaire. Let me read it. The table 2 shows that the validity and reliability tests of the constructs used in the study. Average variance structured is being used to test the convergent validity of the construct. In the study, the average of the latent variables are ranging from 0.541 to 0.705. According to Fornell and Larker, that is dated 1981, criterion, the average variance extracted should be greater than 0.50. Also, the indicator loading of each construct should be greater than or equal to 0.50. Since all the indicator loading and average is higher than zero point 0.5, it means that the constructs of the survey questionnaire pass the validity tests. Further, composite and Cronbach's alpha reliability tests were used to determine the internal consistency of all constructed in statements in the survey. Fournier and Larker, dated 1981, states that the values of composite and Cronbach's alpha should be equal to or greater than 0.7T. In the study, the composite and Cronbach's alpha values were greater than 0.7T, which means that there is an internal consistency of all the constructs used in the survey. Let's proceed with table number T with regards to normality test of the distribution of questionnaire. Let me read it. The researchers test the normality of the distribution of the questionnaire to determine whether there are outliers in the study and to identify the proper statistical tools to be used in the study. According to LACAP, dated 2021, to use parametric statistics, the significant value should be greater than 0.05. Otherwise, used non-parametric if the significant value is 0.05 and below. Results shows that the significant value is less than 0.05. Therefore, the researcher used non-parametric statistic to test the relationship of both independent and dependent variables, which is the Spearman-Raw correlation. Let's move on to table number 4. This is the result. Respondents' assessment on the e-machine shorthand online teaching practices. Let me read it. Table number 4 shows the respondents' assessment on e-machine stenography online learning practices. The table reveals that in terms of resources, the respondent assessed lessons are being updated and are being linked with learning objectives and goals, and the course facilitator delivers easy to understand and navigate instructional tools as extremely effective with both mean of 4.2744 and SD 0.74962 and 0.71955. In terms of student engagement, the respondents assess the course facilitator citing relevant practical example that are linked to the lesson are as extremely effective, with relevant practical examples that are linked to the lesson are extremely effective with mean of 4.3079 and SD of 0.74583. While in terms of orderliness, the respondents assess open quotation, the course facilitator ensures course information and resources are easy to find, end of quote. And open quotation, the course facilitator provides explicit directions and reliable clear due dates, close punctuation. Both got a mean of 4.2317 and with SD or standard deviation of 0.75092 and 0.71760 respectively, which is verbally interpreted as extremely effective. Finally, in terms of faculty presence, the respondents assess, open quote, the weekly synchronous and asynchronous session is led by the course facilitator, end of quote, with a mean of 4.3963 and standard deviation of 73139, interpreted as extremely effective. Overall, the 4 variables were assessed effective to extremely effective by the respondents. Table number 5, now with regards to respondents' assessments on students' performance. Let me read it. The table 5 shows the respondents' assessment on their performance. The result reveal that, open quote, I complete and submit the assignment on time. This is submit, sorry. End of quote, has the highest mean of 4.3476 and standard deviation 0.77099. Interpreted as always, while, open quote, I passed the manipulation of machine shorthand keyboard recitation, end of quote, has the highest mean of 4.0732 with standard deviation 0.77073, interpreted as very open. With regards to table number 6, significant relations of the respondent assessments on the e-machine shorthand online teaching practices and student performance. Let me read it. Table number 6 depicts the relationship of e-machine stenography online teaching practices and student performances. It shows that all four aspects of online teaching practices have a significant and positive but weak relationship with student performance. This means that teaching practices has a direct effect with students' performance. It also shows that if the value of teaching practices increases or decrease, the value of students' performance also increases or decreases. It implies that teachers should always uphold good practices to boost students' performance. In conclusion, according to the findings of this study, all aspects of online teaching practices, including online resources, student engagement, orderliness, and faculty presence, have a significant and positive but weak relationship with student performance. In the study, online teaching practices had a direct effect on student performance, and it was also demonstrated that as the value of teaching practices increased or decreased, so did the value of student performance decreases. It also implies that academicians should always uphold good practices in order to improve student performance. Our recommendation and future research directions: since the SARS-CoV-19 global pandemic imposed many constraints and dilemmas on the operations and strategies of higher education institutions, the government has ordered and directed that no face-to-face classes be held for the academic year 2020 and 2021 until the COVID-19 vaccine drive has achieved 100% herd immunity by Ancheta R and Ancheta H, dated 2020. As the current study suggests that e-machine stenography online learning practices have a significant effect on students' performance, teachers must always look for additional ways to improve course materials or resources, as well as students' interaction to improve students' performance. To engage students in a more enjoyable and conducive e-learning environment, the use of gamification, social media, integration, reflective thinking, and high-quality educational resources should be explored. Further research in the context may be conducted to support or refute the study findings. Sorry? Right? Yeah. Other variables assessing online teaching and learning practices may also be used to test other factors influencing student performance in e-machine stenography teaching practices. That would be all. Thank you so much and have a good day.